Hi, families. It is Jillian here, wanting to say hello in person and communicate a little bit with you about a unit of study that we have just begun in writing workshop. And I know I wrote you a letter about it, and sometimes my letters can be really long and hard to read, especially given these days. Sometimes our attention is really limited and we don't have that much time. So I thought I would give you an optional video to listen to provide you with some strategies of how you might help your child, how you might help your sixth grader as we work through this unit of journalism. And as I wrote in my letter, it's probably never been a more important time to be thinking about journalism and thinking about the news that we get, thinking about how do we read news in a critical way, thinking about whether it is a legitimate resource, whether the news that we're getting is valuable, whether the news is written in a way that is not only compelling, but also honest and has some integrity. So, this is a really important unit, and I am super excited about it. We've already started, and we've started by creating a little bit of a classroom drama. Um, and maybe you've heard about it, but we started with a common event that all of our students, all of the students in 6A can write about so that we have that shared story in mind as we get ready to launch this unit where students will be eventually finding their own event to write about. And so right now we had a little headstead competition in 6A where I competed against a couple of kids to see who could stand on their head the longest. Turns out I won. But it was really fun, and students are right now practicing writing that event and paying attention to the details and reporting about it in a way just as a newspaper reporter or journalist would do. So, here are some ways that you can help your child as we move through this unit together. And I definitely want to be thinking about ways we can work together in terms of setting your kids up for success. So, here are some things that you can try. So, the first thing you can do is to share your day with your child. And one of the things you can do is just to share the events that are newsworthy. And these do not have to be huge events. They don't have to be headstands. They don't have to be big things that happen where there's a fire in your neighborhood or anything like that. They can be small events. It might be something as simple as maybe somebody in the organization you work with quit their job and have left you like, oh my gosh, we're missing this employee right now. Or maybe it's a more personal event where you're waiting for a stimulus check from the government and maybe you got that stimulus check. Or maybe that story is just waiting for it. Maybe the story is a personal one where you have been furloughed in your job or you have been um, asked to take a leave, or maybe you lost your job because of COVID, and how many people right now are really losing their jobs and struggling right now. You might have a conversation with them about something like that. So you can think about your day, think about what's going on for you, maybe in your profession and your work life, or maybe just personally. There's so many stories to tell right now. It might even be about a birthday party that you had with a grandparent. Um, and you want to write about that moment, about how different birthdays look right now. There are just so many different stories to tell right now. So that's one thing you can do with your child, is just to share your day with them. Another thing, another strategy you can do that will help is to ask your child about what they observed through the day that might be newsworthy. Now, I know in sixth grade, I've had two of them. I've been teaching sixth grade for a while. Oftentimes, when we say, how was your day? They say, fine, or good, or boring. But you can prompt them a little bit more. Tell me more about your day. That's a really great prompt. Tell me more about your day. You can think about what is it like in school right now with COVID? What does your classroom look like? What does recess look like? What does lunch look like? How does it work in small groups now with your peers? What does it look like on the playground now? So use some of these questions to prompt them, to get them to say more. And when they're sharing these stories, you can ask them, well, how might you write a newspaper article about that? How would you frame that? I know one of the things that we're doing in 6A right now is we are trying to help out other classrooms by providing other classrooms, particularly the younger grades, with some activities to help them make recess a little bit more interesting. So, your children right now have been creating a scavenger hunt for students in the classroom. And we're going to be working on that tomorrow, Thursday, and Friday. You can ask them about that. So that's something else you can do in terms of getting your kids to talk about their day. Another thing you can do is to read the newspaper with them. You can, I don't know if you get the newspaper, you can certainly look at the hard copy and look at that with them. Maybe pick one article to read with them. Look at the format, look at the elements, look at the tone, look at the language. These are things that we've been doing. This is how we've launched the unit, is really by studying newspapers as a what we call a mentor text. And a mentor text is something that we study and we learn from as we create our own kind of writing that's the same. So you can look at the newspaper, look at the photos, look at the language, maybe even use a highlighter. And you can also get articles from the Gazette, from the Recorder. And even if you don't subscribe to those newspapers, you can get I think it's every week you can get, or maybe even every, I'm not sure of how often, but I get free articles all the time. And you can also look at them online with your child. So that's something else. Another thing you can do is to watch the news with them. So while we're not creating news programs, although that might be something fun that we do where we videotape each other, right now we're just writing newspaper articles. But journalists, whether they are newspaper reporters or on the news, you can actually watch it with them and discuss the tone, discuss the language. You might even be watching one news station, such as CNN, and then another news station like NPR, and listening to the way they deliver the news. What's the difference? What's the tone? You'll notice when you're watching reliable news sources that the tone is professional. It is objective. So you also want to be maybe even watching some that's not objective. You might want to watch Fox News or Rachel Maddow and talk about the difference between how different reporters are reporting the news. Do they have an angle? Do they have their own opinions? Do they talk about an issue objectively or subjectively? So those are some other things that you can do in terms of talking about journalism with them. And it's also just a really valuable skill for students, for your children to be thinking about moving forward in the world. How do I look at news in that critical way? Lastly, while we're thinking critically about journalism, is you might even pull up an article on the National Enquirer and talk about fake news. How do you know if it's fake? How do you know whether these are reliable resources? How do you know about looking at different angles? And again, just as I said, it might be helpful to look at the way one program addresses an issue and look at the way another program addresses the same issue. These are the kinds of skills that we need to teach our children, not just in school, but also something that you can do at home with your kids as parents. So, good luck with this. Feel free to send me an email. Let me know how it goes. And I'd really love to know what you're thinking about in your day and how that could be newsworthy. Thanks for listening.